Hi everyone, it's Laura Volpes, and in today's video I'm going to share with you a very easy way to create a brushstroke type of background using stamps by Studio Katia. As always, if you do enjoy the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section down below. This helps me knowing that you did enjoy the content, and it also helps my video being shown to other crafters out there. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. And now let's get started with the tutorial. To start off, I die cut some Bristol Smooth cardstock to an A2 size using the rectangle die in the Darling Ribbon and Dotted Frames dies. I'm going to trim down this panel a little bit smaller later, but this is what I started with. To create some easy and controlled brush strokes on my background, I used the Brush Strokes Stripe stamp set by Studio Katia. This has individual stamps that you can use to stamp your stripes, and I arranged them in my mini Misty on top of my Bristol Smooth cardstock card base. I then picked up the stamps by closing the lid of my Misty once I found an arrangement that I liked, and then I started doing some stamping with dye inks. I started with Sky Blue ink by Pinkfresh Studio, and I'm just going to ink up the stamp and stamp it on my cardstock. One thing that I wanted to mention is that Bristol Smooth cardstock may not be the best cardstock for stamping, and this is because it has a sleek surface, so your dye inks will sit on top of the cardstock for a little bit before soaking into the paper. The result was crisp in the end, but I did have to go over the cardstock multiple times with my stamp. This was not a problem because I am using my mini Misty, so I can tuck the cardstock back in the lower right corner of the mini Misty, and I can stamp the image again until I get the impression that I want. As you can see, it is not 100% perfect, but I don't mind because I like the textured look. Now, I wanted to tone down this bright blue a little bit. I love the color, but it is not what I was going for my background. So without removing my stamps and with my background again tucked against the corner of my mini Misty, I inked up the stamps with Mint ink by Pinkfresh Studio, and I stamped the image again. I then decided to come in with Rocky Slope ink by Pinkfresh Studio, and I stamped directly on top of my background with this light grey ink. This had the effect of toning down my background and make the colors a little bit more muted, and I loved the way the final result looked like. So here you can see how you can basically extend your color palette by just layering different dye inks. Moving on to the images, I used the PEONY Trimmings stamp set by Studio Katia, and I'm stamping one of the images using Blackout ink by Ink on 3 on some more Bristol Smooth cardstock by Strathmore. The reason why I chose this ink and this cardstock is that I will be coloring with my ARTEZA markers today. In case you don't know these markers, these are some water-based brush markers which blend really beautifully on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and because they are water-based, I needed an ink that would be waterproof. For my coloring, I decided to use only 2 markers to shade in both the petals and the leaves. I am using some brush strokes to create texture on my petals, and I am starting at the base of the petals and moving towards the tips, but I'm making sure to leave a white area where I'm going to then come in with my lighter marker. I am also paying attention if there are folds or any petals that overlap, because there will be shadows there too. And the idea came from the live that I did on the Studio Katia Facebook page and group last Friday. I created a card where I did a 1 marker shading of a larger floral stamp by Studio Katia, and today I tried a different version with 2 markers instead with this other larger floral stamp. The idea is to create a beautiful result without spending too much time on the coloring. I do love coloring and I like taking my time, but I also understand that we don't always have the extra time, and also maybe spending hours on coloring is not for everyone, and I wanted to show you that you can still do something really pretty with a large stamp like this one in a very easy and quick way. You can see that I skipped over some of the coloring because it was the same technique and I didn't want the video to be too long. I just used a warm yellow for the center of one of the peonies, and then I'm using some kind of bluish greens to color in the leaves. I chose blue greens rather than more yellow type of greens because I felt that this shade would match nicely with the background I have and would also complement nicely the peachy tones that I chose for my peonies. Once the coloring was over, I die cut the image with the Peony Trimmings coordinating dies. I love that now these border stamp sets do come with matching dies, which makes very easy to cut them out. Also, to have a continuous dotted border all around my card front, I decided to run this image again through my die cutting machine using the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies. And then I started playing around with these flowers and the background to figure out what kind of design I wanted to go for. And at this point I decided that I wanted my background to be a little bit smaller than that and to have a frame on my design. So I die cut some more Bristol Smooth cardstock with the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies, and that will be my card base that you can see on the left portion of the screen. And then I cut down this brush strokes background using the Dotted Patterns Set 1 dies. This cuts a rectangle which is roughly 3 3/4 by 5 inches, so I will have a 1/4 of an inch border all around my card front. For my sentiment, I decided to use this beautiful scripty happy in the Happy Stamp Set by Studio Katia. I am laying everything down in my MISTI to figure out the position of the sentiment, and then I'm going to stamp it directly on my striped background using again blackout ink. For the second part of the sentiment, I'm going to use one of the greetings in the Peony Trimmings stamp set, which reads "Sending happy thoughts." I wanted to just use the sending and thoughts part of the sentiment, so I'm going to do some masked stamping. Also because I wanted to do some heat embossing with white embossing powder on some black cardstock, I made sure to prep my cardstock using an anti-static powder tool, and then I stamped the words sending and thoughts using clear embossing ink. In the final card, I'm actually only going to use the word thoughts because I felt that the design looked nicer that way, but for now I didn't know that, so that's why I am heat embossing both words. The coordinating dies to the Peony Trimmings stamp set come with a number of banner dies that you can use to create sentiment banners, and I used one of them to die cut both the word sending and the word thoughts. Here is where I was playing around with the sentiment banners and I figured out that I was only going to keep the word thoughts. So after that I moved on and started adhering everything to my card base, starting from my striped background and then moving on to my Peony Trimmings stamp set, and I'm using Studio Katia liquid glue to adhere everything flush to my card base. Next, I adhered the sentiment banner with the word thoughts, slightly overlapping with both the word happy and one of the peonies in the set, making sure that it was nice and straight, and then I moved on to the finishing touches. I adhered a few icy sparkle crystals to my card front, which are really beautiful, and then I also added a little bit of glitter using a glitter brush pen by scrapbook.com, which I used to coat all the peonies in the image. And here is the final result. I really love the way this card turned out. I love the clean look and those crystals add just the right amount of sparkle, plus that brushstroke background is really pretty and was super easy to make. And that's it for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. As always, thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.